Welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, Yarby Laws, and this is my co-host.
For Wells.
We appreciate those of you, who do watch our videos. The playoffs are not slowing down, and neither is the content that we're going to be putting out. And honestly, I'm still in awe about what we're about to talk about. Because it was a wild game. But before we jump into this big discussion, please don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the OBT Podcast. Um,
Yep. And also, just in
what's up?
fairness, after um, Monday's game 7, we will be doing a live stream, obviously
Yes.
reacting to that game once it happens, right? Getting into the finals matchup, all that good stuff. So just be prepared for a live stream on a Monday, regardless of what happens, because it is the last game of the series.
Yeah, almost completely forgot about that. Thank you for throwing that in there.
Mhm.
Also, happy Memorial Day to everybody. So, hope you're enjoying your holiday and all that stuff, and resting up over this holiday. But, the pressing matter is Boston. They have officially come back. They've evened the series up 3-3. They did it in a 1-point victory. We'll get to why that happened in a second. We're going to talk about this entire game because we only have one game to recap, so it's going to be pretty in depth, I think. But yeah, they won this game 104 to 103. And we have to start with the winners, but oh goodness gracious, Boston team, they're so inconsistent. Sometimes I don't know if they're trying to purposely sell these games. It's like they do these weird things where they take horrible shots and just let the team that they're playing against get back into the game. It's ugly. And that's not how you win championships. So, you know, I just don't know what to say about this Boston team, honestly, because I mean, we have to look at the stats first. But overall, I want to talk about the team first before we drill down on individuals. But as a team, they shot 20% from the 3-point line. And normally they don't win games like that. And they definitely probably should not have won this game. I think God was on their side and luck was on their side, especially considering how they won this game. Like I said, we'll talk about that in a second. But holy cow, 20% from three is crazy. They went 7 for 35. Um, and it's just ugly in general. Um, Coaching wise, I don't think there were too many mistakes. Refing and officiating definitely played a factor into this, huge factor. But to drill down to the individuals, we have to start with Jason Tatum, 31 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists. He had a great first half. I mean, he was on fire. I mean, he was lighting Jimmy Butler up. I think, he had like
25
25.
at
Yep.
halftime.
Yeah, 25 at halftime. But that just goes to show you he cooled down tremendously and it was not good. He had a classic, disappearance where he just disappears and it wasn't, the greatest. Jalen Brown, on the other hand, I thought he had a great game. He had a issue with foul trouble though. 26 points, 10 rebounds, but I thought he had a pretty good game. Solid. He looked aggressive, more like the Jalen Brown that you need and want if you're a Boston fan. Al Horford, once again, not too big of an impact. Only interior buckets. Seemed like the jump shot wasn't going in. Definitely wasn't. Considering they shot 7 for 35. But he did have 7 rebounds, so 2 assists and some great defensive plays. I'll give him that because he definitely was a catalyst for some of the defensive plays that they had, especially around the rim. Marcus Smart, this was a big deal. When Marcus Smart has a great shooting game and a great game like that, I think this Boston team is one to watch because when he's on fire, I think he has potential to be not like a superstar, but a great third option because he can hit the shot, he can be creative and all that stuff. But when it's off, it's so off. But luckily for Boston, it was on tonight. He had 21 points and he was sparking them from three. Um, 4 rebounds as well. Solid defensive, outing, but at the same time, there were some lapses that were pretty costly, especially when it came to Duncan Robinson a few times. And now, the hero, Derek White. He had 11 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, including a game winner with zero point 0.1 seconds left on the clock after Marcus Smart brick. Um, First, before we talk about that in depth a little bit more, Robert Williams had 10 points, 7 rebounds. Great outing, I thought. Had a really emphatic lob dunk and some really good defensive plays. Huge O boards and some and ones. But, back to Derek White. Definitely the hero and the star of the show. He he won this game for them. And, you know, with zero point 0.1 seconds left, it's crazy. I was in disbelief. I thought, Marcus Smart, he chucked up a three. Not a bad shot, I don't think, but it was kind of the only shot that they kind of had available considering,
There's only
he
3 seconds on the clock.
exactly. There were 3 seconds left. He was kind of the one that was making the threes anyway. Tatum wasn't, too hot from the 3. Jaylen Brown wasn't too crazy from 3, but
Combined 0 for 12.
exactly. So, it wasn't that good. So you kind of had to give it to Marcus Smart. That's the kind of the guy that you trust in that situation if he's hot. So, I don't really have any hate towards him taking that shot at all. I know some people are like, "Why is he taking that shot? It's a horrible shot." No, not really. If you know basketball, it's not a horrible shot. Um and he almost made it, which is a crazy thing. He almost made that thing. But it didn't. It rimmed out, and then Derek White catches it with like point 0.4, point 0.3 seconds left on the clock and releases it with point 0.1. Um, but wow, what a game! I think this was one of the most entertaining games that I've seen. In my short time watching basketball, only since like the early 2000s. So, but it was crazy, and Boston, they were up for a lot. They I'm not gonna say they firmly had, this game in command or whatever, or they were firmly in the driver's seat, but they were up and their lead dwindled, and it was partly due to Jimmy Butler getting to the line and definitely, the role players and the guys who stepped up, specifically, guys like Caleb Martin, Gabe Vincent, huge, Duncan Robinson, those guys stepped up when, Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler are playing some of the worst games that we've ever seen from them. So, I don't want to talk for too much longer, but wow, I'm just still really in awe about the fact that Boston is still alive after such a poor performance like that. But sometimes you got to win, these ugly games, and that's kind of what championship teams are made of. But at the same time, when you're shooting 20% from the 3 point line, but your offense is predicated on threes, I don't know. That's kind of worrisome for me. So I don't know how you feel, but I'm worried about Boston, but I still think they're going to win it in game 7. But when it comes to these finals, I think Denver's probably going to get them if, it is a Boston versus Denver finals.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real winner of this game, I feel like is kind of Denver, just in the sense of like they've kind of been resting, they've been
Yep.
chilling, for basically what, like 9, 10 days at this point, and they're gonna get a little bit more time off. Finals are on June 1st, so that's not until I think Thursday.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, but yeah, just this was like you said, this was definitely an incredible game. Like you said, Boston was up for the majority of the game, but they
Hmm.
were never up by a ton. They had a couple of stretches where they extended to double digits, but they were very brief. Right, every time Boston would go on a run, Miami would go on a quick little run to get it back.
Yep.
And I think Miami took a lead early in the fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken,
Hmm.
right? And then, at one point, like I think they were up by one. Jimmy Butler, I think it was Duncan Robinson missed a shot, and then
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler tipped it in.
Yes.
And then after that, right, then it was like it kind of snowballed from there for Miami, where it was like Jaylen Brown gets a layup, but he Bam blocks it, but because his hand is on the rim, it's a goaltend, but then
Yep.
it was also a technical,
Technical.
which I
Yeah.
was kind of confused by because I feel like usually it's just a goaltend. So he got two free
Well,
throws because he got
well,
one for the and one, and then one for the tech. I guess because his hand was on the rim.
yeah. So the league formality is you're not supposed to hang on the rim.
Right.
Um, I think you can hang on the rim after a dunk, but not for too long. But when there's no like play going on, or if there's a shot going up, you can't hang on the rim at all. So it's kind of like a league formality, weird kind of thing, where it's like he kind of just broke a rule, but it's like the rule is kind of outdated. So I don't know,
No.
it kind of funky, but I
Yeah.
agree. It was kind of confusing, but I do understand it now that they've kind of broken it down.
But yeah, and then like I said, then after that, right, Horford, as you mentioned, with some big defensive plays, he blocked
Hmm.
Bam. Basically what, like a few feet from the basket, right?
Yeah.
And then again, Jaylen Brown gets out in transition, gets a couple free throws, right? Then another situation, right, where where I think Butler missed a relatively easy layup for him. And then Brown gets the rebound, right?
Hmm.
Then again, out in transition, Tatum gets fouled, gets two free throws,
Yeah.
right? And then it just kind of goes back and forth from there, right? And like you said, for most of the game, it was really the role players for Miami that were really keeping them in the game because
Hmm.
if you look at I mean, most of Miami's misses were from two. Really, the only reason why Miami was in the game was because the 3 point shot was keeping them in the game. Because, like you mentioned, Boston, the 3 point shot wasn't falling for them, but it
Right.
definitely was for Miami. But Like you said, just was so strange with Boston because they were up for most of the game, and then I think with about 3 minutes to go, right, they go up by 9, and then it feels like okay, they probably got this game, right, and then they just go on again one of those weird stretches where they're not good in crunch time all year, and then Miami all of a sudden you look up and it's like, wait a second, they're only like what 2 points back, right?
Yeah.
Because I think Gabe Vincent makes a layup, Jimmy Butler makes the step back three where he catches it, right? Then he gets to the
Mhm.
line, makes a free throw, gets to the line again and one, right? And
Mhm.
then again and then he's at the in the corner, right? And then Horford fouls him. And initially it's a 2-point foul, I think, right? And then
Yeah.
Boston challenges it. And then it's a double whammy because you lose the challenge and it's also changed to a three. So
Right.
instead of him getting two to tie, he gets three to win and he makes all three. And then, with 3 seconds left, you're like, wow, like it didn't feel like Miami had a chance.
Did you I have a question. Sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't really mean to cut you off, but did you think he double dribbled? Jimmy, that is.
I mean, I guess you could argue, yeah, but I feel
Right.
like they don't usually call those type of things late in the game. Like, I
Sure.
think like earlier in the game, I guess they called what was it, the palm or carry or whatever on
Mhm.
Tatum.
Yeah, that was so odd. I
Um,
was like, "What?"
but I feel like, yeah, I feel like in general, you just don't see those type of things get called late in games. Like,
Yeah.
and also like, I think it was also just a bad decision by Horford. I just think when you got such little time on the clock, like, why are
And
you that close to the guy? I mean, he's big enough where he can just put his arms up and just try to
yeah.
contest it without fouling. But again, like, when you're a center or a big and you're, not as fast, right? You got to kind of make up for it. But
Yeah.
I just thought it was a bad decision
And
for
he
him to
didn't
foul.
and he didn't even touch the ball, that's why I was curious
Yeah,
about what the double
right.
dribble
I think
cuz
it was the right call.
he didn't touch the ball. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it was the right call. I think, even if it was, they technically should have really let it go cuz there are a couple plays where even both sides really where it's like are those really fouls? In the first quarter I thought, they were letting them play, but I don't know
Yeah,
what happened. The officiating kind of
yeah,
took a I don't know, a dip. It
yeah.
was weird.
I do think it was a poorly officiated game, and then
Yeah.
then after that, right? Then of course, like you mentioned, Marcus Smart gets the three off. Again, not a whole lot you can do with 3 seconds left. Maybe you'd
Right.
like to get a better shot, than the shot Smart got. But again, you don't have a ton of options. Both of your
Right.
stars were, at that point, scoreless from three. Um, and again, like down the stretch, they didn't really do a whole lot, right? It was kind
Mhm.
of like, I mean, they were kind of just hanging around, right? But then the commentators made the point, right, where you have Max Strus, he's guarding White on the inbounds, but he's, not really guarding him. He's kind of just there. And he makes a big mistake, right? Because he doesn't box out.
Yep.
And then Derek White gets the rebound. And it was funny because I know the commentators and everybody thought like that it was late. When it happened, I was like, yeah, it's probably good, isn't it?
Yeah,
And then
I knew it
they,
was good. I
yeah,
was
and then
telling
they
my
looked
mom that.
and then they looked at it and it was like, "Yep, it was good." So yeah, that was kind of like you said, that was definitely one of the craziest ways to see, a game end, and
Yeah.
especially like with Miami, like that's a pretty
It's the nail in the
debilitating.
coffin for them.
Exactly, because I mean, like you're right there, and again, it was a game where it didn't feel like they were probably going to win, and then they were right there. They had a chance to win with, like you said, no time left on the clock, and then
Mhm.
with point 1 seconds, the basketball gods punish you for making one mistake, and that one mistake cost them. But even with the officiating, I do feel like Miami for most of the game just didn't play well enough to win.
Yeah.
At home, right? You just needed a better game out of your stars.
Mhm.
Um, Personally, I thought they would need like a big Bam and Jimmy game for them to win, but as it turned out, the role players played well enough where like even just an average performance by those guys probably still gets them a win.
Well,
But
my thing
huh?
sorry, I don't wanna I'm so sorry to keep cutting you off, but, like, my thing is I really firmly believe that Boston just played mediocre, honestly,
I
and
mean,
I
I
think
think
that's a problem.
yeah, I think so late in the game because like I said, I thought Miami was done.
Yeah.
Because it just felt like, every time Miami kind of got it close, then Boston would kind of just, pull away. And it felt like their process was just a little bit more sustainable. I mean, Miami couldn't hit anything inside of the 3-point line. Um,
Yeah.
Primarily Jimmy and Bam, but like
Right.
it just like if you can't make layups, I mean, like you're probably just not going to win. But like
Sure.
you said, Boston definitely. If Boston had lost this game, I think it would have been looked like what an absolute failure by Boston. Because again,
Sure.
like you had a 10-point lead with under 3 minutes left. You have the game pretty much in hand, and just like it just quickly got out of hand. But that's been the issue for them all year. It didn't cost them in this game, but like I mean, at the same time, man, what a I don't want to say lucky, but
It
like at
is
the same
lucky.
time, like in a way, it was kind of like the perfect storm, right? Because he misses, and then the ball misses in a way where he's able to get the tip, right? Because let's
Hmm.
say it's like a really short miss, he probably can't get that, right? If it's
Right.
short, if it front rims and it's short, or if it bounces to the right, right? Then he and as opposed to the left, like he can't get it. So I mean, I don't know. Like you said, I feel like at this point, like with the way that Miami lost, I feel like it's I don't feel like they're gonna win game 7 at this point. I just feel like when you lose a game like that, like just psychologically, like that's gotta be like
Yeah.
incredibly damaging. I mean, I'm sure they'll try to give it a go, but like I would be pretty surprised at this point if Boston didn't win. And this
Yeah.
honestly, I feel like I would probably lean more towards it being maybe just a blowout because
Sure.
I just feel like this was the game for you to win if you're Miami. You're at home. You're one game away from the finals. The role players typically play better at home, and you got the role players. You just needed just an average game from Butler and I mean, they lost by a point, right? I mean, like, and those two guys shot a combined 9 for 37, I think, right?
Yeah.
So which is like that's like 24, 25%, I think, if my math's right. So I
Yeah.
mean, like, that's just
It's not gonna
that's
get it
just
done.
not good enough. And again, like, I know Robinson missed a couple threes late, but it's like I'm not gonna blame the game on him. Like, I mean,
No.
at the end of the day, I just feel like the Stars for Miami didn't play well enough to win, and they needed to capitalize because, like you said, Boston was falling apart. And Butler, to his credit, he did get them back in the game and put them in a position to win. But then it's like if he didn't play as bad as he did through the first 3 quarters, they would have already been up.
It would have been done.
Yeah, it would have already been over because again, a game you lose by a point and your two stars are 9 for 37. That's just not good enough to get it done. I mean,
No.
like I said, that's disappointing. And it's in Spolstra, he made some changes to the rotation. Right, he played basically 7 guys, I think. Right, no more Love. Zeller only played like 2 minutes.
Right.
Which I get. Right, you needed to start Martin because he had been pretty much like their second, third best player this series. So you needed him, and again, to his credit, he played very well. 21 points, 15 rebounds, 4 of 8 from three, 7 of 13 from the field. Right, again, the role players did their job at home, but the Stars did not. And unfortunately, that one's probably going to sting if you're Miami. But
Yes.
with the White putback, this is kind of sometimes what happens in the playoffs where luck does play a huge factor. And again, like I don't want to boil the putback completely down to luck, but
Hmm.
just in general, I mean, like when you look at the course of the NBA's history, right? Like, a lot of teams that won titles or teams that got far in the playoffs, right, had a little bit of luck involved. Even Miami, I think, was kind of fortunate to have, the Giannis injury.
Sure.
And maybe they beat Miami, maybe they beat Milwaukee regardless. But I mean, just in general, I mean, you can't discount the injuries.
Sure.
And in fairness, Miami's hurt too, so maybe we shouldn't have expected them to go up 3-0. But I don't know if Miami loses Game 7. Like, I feel like that almost, like, is gonna make a lot of people feel very differently about their postseason run because it's like they're the 8th seed, they really shouldn't have even been here, but then it's like you went up 3-0, you needed to finish the job, and it's like you've had
Somebody's
4
gonna get blamed.
chances. Yeah, and it's like you've had 4 chances in that. I mean, I guess never say never. I mean, Boston, I don't think anybody thought when they were down 3-0 that they would come back.
Yeah.
So there is a chance Miami can win Game 7, but I feel like that's going to be very difficult because I just feel like mentally, emotionally, just the way that that game went down, like I just feel like that would be a pretty debilitating loss for anybody. Like I don't care who you are, like losing a game like that. I mean, with a finals trip on the line to now have to do it again 2 days later, except this time you're on the road
Yeah.
in Game 7 in a hostile environment. Your role players may not be there this time around. I mean, that's a pretty tough situation to be in if you're Miami. And like you said, for Boston, it's weird because it's like, yeah, they have a real chance to come back, down 3-0. But then it's like, is it impressive? Yeah, I guess. But at the
Shouldn't have
same
been there
time,
anyways.
yeah, at the same time, it's like, should they really have been there? Because I mean, I feel like the team that's won the last 3 games feels more like the Boston I would have expected.
Sure.
I mean, in fairness, we thought this would be a long series. I didn't think it would be a long series after they went up 3-0. I mean, we did it. I think what was it, like a week ago? I think it was last uh Monday's episode. We were talking about Boston's offseason because we thought it was over.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That was last week.
Exactly. Yeah, we thought the series was over, so we
Yeah,
were talking about Boston's offseason, but I mean at this point Miami might be done, but I feel like it's gonna be the same setup for game 7 if you're Miami. Your stars got it, and your stars especially have to show up because again, I don't think you're gonna get as many good performances from the role players as they did in game 6, but
no,
I don't know. I feel like Boston may have figured them out sort of defensively,
right.
but even then it's like like if the Derek White putback doesn't happen, then we're not even talking about this. So it's just like I don't know. I honestly have no idea how game 7 is going to go. If I had to bet my money, I would guess Boston would win because they're at home and I just feel like losing the way that Miami did in game 6 is, that's not good to go on the road and do it again.
Right.
But who knows at this point? I mean like cuz Boston, you know, this is kind of wild for them where it's like they've trailed now in back-to-back series, right? Cuz last round we thought that they would, I mean, not that like that was going to be a short series, but I think we thought that Boston was definitely better than Philly, and I mean they were trailing and were a one fourth quarter away from being eliminated in 6, right? And so it's like now I don't know what to expect because it's like then it's like oh they go against Miami, this should be a easier ish matchup than Philly, but then it's like then they go down 3-0, but now it's back and it's one game and in a one game scenario anything can happen, but I feel like usually you would bet on the home team to get it done. So I mean, like, I feel like Boston at this point should win,
Mhm.
but I mean, who knows? Maybe like somebody has like a crazy lucky night. Somebody just goes crazy on Miami's team from three and like
We'll
just
see.
yeah, but who knows? Or maybe Lucky the Leprechaun himself just comes out on the floor and just all of a sudden just kind of sprinkles some
Exactly.
leprechaun dust or something all over the floor. I don't
Exactly.
know. Like this has been one of these this has been one of the strangest playoff series I've ever seen, especially because again, this has never happened before where, a team is down 3-0 and now they have a legitimate chance to win. I think there's been
Well,
four
it's
times
yeah, it's been 4,
where a
but none
team
of them ended
none
up
of them
winning
won.
game 7
But I feel like most people now are picking Boston to win.
because
Yeah.
this is the thing. I think most people were picking Boston to win, from game 1.
Yeah.
But the tides turned so oddly and then, come to find out Boston's down, you know, 3-0 and it's like why? That's what I'm
Yeah.
confused about. Why
Honestly,
were they down?
I just don't know. I mean, I guess again, people have pointed out in the first 3 games, especially in games 1 and 3, Miami shot like over 50% from 3 and Boston
True.
shot terrible from 3. And I mean, I don't know, but like
That
it's
can't be
so
the
weird
only
because
reason
like
though.
Boston won and it's like to me Miami played so poorly like in different stretches where I'm like they shouldn't have won, but then like I'm also left kind of saying like Miami should have won that game. Like I mean, you got the stop, right? Right? You saw Jimmy Butler in the timeout. He's like one more stop.
Yeah.
And they actually do get the stop, right? Cuz I mean again, you'd rather Marcus I know that Tatum and Brown were really struggling from 3, but I mean, you'd rather Marcus Smart take a 3 with the series on the
Yeah.
line than Tatum or Brown. And you got the stop, but then you didn't box out.
Nope.
I do think that was kind of a mistake by Spoelstra, just because I think Strus was out of the game when Miami was making the run. It was Duncan Robinson, and he put Strus back in the final possession. I
I
guess
feel like
just because
Strus
he's
is
a
a better
little bit,
defender,
I guess, but also like
but
at the
they're
same
both not
time,
that
like
good.
yeah, that neither one is a great defender, and
Defenders.
also like
Defenders.
I'm usually just not a big fan of like putting somebody in the game in a final possession when they haven't played in a long stretch because I just feel like in terms of like game sense and just like how locked in and focused
Sure.
you are, like it's just not going to be the same. But who knows? Maybe Duncan Robinson's in there and he makes the same mistake. But the basketball gods, they punish you for making mistakes like that. If you don't box out, it's kind of like with free throws, right? Where we've seen games where teams don't box out the free throw shooter,
Yep.
and the guy at the free throw line gets a putback, and basically gives his team a chance. We saw, I think, Luca when he had his 60-point game, right? He got the Mavs back into the game, right, by getting a putback on a missed free throw.
Mhm.
I think Donovan Mitchell had a regular season game where he got a putback off a missed free throw, although they said it was a lane violation, but later, but still, like it's just that was a mistake by Miami, right? Because and again, it was just weird because Boston was making a ton of mistakes down the stretch to get Miami back into the game, and it felt like, oh boy, here we go, another bad Boston meltdown. but they got kind of saved. Derek White's literally saved their season, right? We mentioned the Lonnie Walker game for the Lakers. This is the Derek White game, because even aside from the putback, he still had a good game. I think he had, again, like you mentioned, he had 4 rebounds. He was 3 of 7 from three, including some big threes, and he had 3 blocks because I
Yeah.
think he had, and one of them was like a big block on Jimmy Butler, right, where Butler is, close to the basket, and White just goes straight up and blocks him. They had mentioned Butler had been blocked what, like 8, 9 times this series.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I just feel like for Boston, you're at home. Your role players should play well. Obviously, we forgot to mention no Brogdon. He had an elbow issue. I don't know if he's going to play in Game 7, but they didn't really need him, I guess. Um, but just in general, I mean, like for Boston, you're at home. Your role players should play well, so they should be favored to win this game. They should win the game, but also they haven't been that great at home. So
Right.
like there is a chance for them to just lay an egg. But also like if you're Boston, you survived a poor 3-point shooting game, right? Because I didn't think they were going to have 4 great 3-point shooting games in a row.
Mm-mm.
But in fairness, they won the one game where they shot poorly from three in these last few games. So if you get an average 3-point shooting game again, right? Like if it's closer to, well, I mean 40% is an average, but if it's closer to 40, you're probably going to win. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, because like I said, psychologically and mentally, I just feel like it's going to be really tough for Miami to pull it out. And as the game continues to get close, I'm sure it's going to be in guys' minds like, oh my goodness, this could be it. We could blow a 3-0 lead. Um, and again, I don't know who they turned to because they went with 7 guys. And I just feel like they need a little bit more size out there, but they don't really have any. Because again, like even aside from that one putback, Boston got a number of offensive rebounds. I think they had 12. Miami had more. They had 17, but they also missed way more shots.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you're gonna get more if you miss more shots. But all of Boston's offensive rebounds were like just crucial, just daggers for Miami because they would miss a shot, right? Miami would get a stop, play good defense, and then Boston would get the offensive rebound, kick it back out, and it would usually result like in a three or like a trip to the free throw line. I mean, but again, like Miami hasn't been great at rebounding. It's a small team,
Yeah.
right? When you don't have another big outside of Bam playing, you're even smaller. Um, I mean, Caleb Martin led them in rebounds, and he's like what 6'5". I mean, he had
Yeah.
15 rebounds, and he's like
Mm-hmm.
6. Yeah, exactly. He's 6'5". That shouldn't really be happening, but I don't know. I mean, like I said, it could go either way, but I feel like at this point you almost have to lean towards Boston. Just even though they're not great at home, I feel like for a Game 7, they're gonna be ready. They're gonna be prepared.
Yeah.
And they should win. Um, just in general. But I guess if I guess I'll wait. You could say what you have left, and then I guess I'll add one more thing to the conversation
Sure.
before we move on.
I guess my takeaways from this game were Boston has the capabilities to get to the finals. It's just you know, can their inconsistency go away in game 7? And I think it will because A, they're at home. B, home at home role players tend to play better. You said it yourself. Um so I'm taking Boston to win game 7. But, as for the X factors, I think Marcus Smart is going to be a big one. And I think I'm not sure if Brogdon's going to be playing, but it's got to be between either Brogdon or Derek White. I think those two guys are also going to be X factors. Um, and then obviously keys to victory for me would probably be Tatum having a monster game, Brown having a pretty good game, Horford at least getting 10 points. Um, and then like I said, the X factors have to show up as well. Um, but even if Boston does get to the finals, it's like it's gonna be all for naught because I think Denver's gonna put the hammer to them. But
Yeah, I
and that's
mean,
for whoever gets to the finals, even if it's Miami. But
I do
that's all
think
I
Boston
really have
has
to say about the series.
yeah, I do think Boston has a better chance
Mm-hmm.
um, to beat Denver than Miami just because they'll
Yes.
have home court.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like, Tatum, I mean, like, he's really good. I mean, I know he's not quite as good as Jokic, obviously, right? But again, like he's a very good player, and you do have Brown, who's a really good number two. I mean, I feel like Boston should like have a chance to beat Denver. I mean, you're the higher seed. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they're the 2 seed in the East, but they have the better record, so they have home court. Even though again they haven't been great at home, so they should have a chance. I don't think they'll be favored just because Denver's cruised pretty much to the finals I mean, like, what, they lost once in the first round, twice in the second round, swept the conference final. So they've basically been chilling. Whereas like Boston, if they get to the finals, right, they had a 6 game series in the first round and then back to back game 7 series where in the conference finals they were down 3-0.
Right.
So, but I do kind of wonder, like, we talked about coaching, but it's also like I kind of wonder, like, is that conversation kind of flipped now? Because it's like
Yeah, I think
I
it
feel like
has.
most people would say Spoelstra is definitely the superior coach to Missoula. Um, and he was getting hammered, and I do think rightfully so when they were going down 3-0. But the funny thing is, if Boston wins game 7, it comes back, I don't think he'll get any of the credit.
No, it's gonna be on the players.
Yeah, it's
Whoever
gonna
whoever shows up in game 7 is
yeah,
gonna get
if
all the
yeah,
credit.
if they win game 7, I feel like most of the credit's gonna go to the players and not the coach.
Mhm.
So I do kind of wonder, like, and again, this is one series, and I do think coaching does make a difference, but also like you do need to have talent. And the reason why going into the series we picked Boston over Miami was even though we said like Missoula is not as good of a coach as Spolster, we're also like Boston has too much talent, to just kind of go out early, in the playoffs, especially compared to the other Eastern Conference teams that were left, right?
Mhm.
Like when we were in the second round, right? It was them, it was Miami, it was Philly, and it was New York, right? And I
Yes.
just feel like Boston should be the most talented of those 4 teams. And again, they almost lost to Philly. We're a put back away from losing to Miami. So I mean, I don't know. Like you said, they've been so up and down, so inconsistent. But I mean, at the end of the day, it does take a lot of grit and it does take a lot of toughness to get back to where they are right now. Because again, this is something that they're on the verge of accomplishing something that no one has ever accomplished before. And
Yeah.
again, with a rookie head coach, I think that you do get credit for that. But at the same time, it is just kind of weird because like I still don't think they should have been in that hole in the first place, but stranger things have happened, I guess, at times in the playoffs, and we don't I feel like we don't usually always take into account, yeah, luck does sometimes play a factor. You do
Yes.
need luck to win a title. You need luck sometimes to win playoff games, and it's not always just injuries, or just random things. Sometimes it can literally just be kind of like luckiest shots. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, like, again, he was open, he wasn't boxed out, but
It's still
again,
crazy. I can't get over it.
exactly.
Point
If
0.1 seconds, dude.
Yeah, like, if that same
Holy.
play replayed 10 times, how many times out of that 10 does that happen? Like, because
Exactly.
in terms of how the ball bounces, right? Like, I mean, you just never know. So, but still, credit to Boston for tying up the series, which again, like, when they were down 3-0, like I said, last week, we were talking about them like the series was over. I
Right.
think we kind of changed our tune once they got it to 3-2. Because I'm like, initially when they were down 3-0, or no, when they got it back to 3-1, I was like, I figured they would get one, but they'll probably lose the next game. Um, but then like once they got it to 3-2, I'm like, oh, they have a real chance because most
It's
teams
there.
don't get it to 3-2. So like something's there. And
Exactly.
now it's 3-3 and it's anybody's game. And like I said, I think we're both picking Boston to win game 7.
Yes.
Um, but at the same time, like you just don't know with this series, right? Like I feel like so many people have been really just wrong and just up and down about these series because we picked Boston going into the series, and then of course we were shocked to see them go down 3-0. And not one, and again, I gave them like a basically as close to a 0% chance as possible to them
Right.
coming back, but now they're right there. It's literally 50-50. I mean,
Yeah.
because
It's
again,
even.
whoever wins this game goes to the finals. So this is for all the marbles. So
It's a big
going back
deal.
to exactly. So going back to Miami, again, Butler and Bam, you got to make up for your performances in game 6 because
Yes.
I mean, again, I know Butler had the great close to the game, but he was pretty bad for most of the game. And he was one of the biggest reasons why they were in that hole because they needed him to take advantage and he just couldn't get it done, right? There were a lot of shots that he just left short. And then there were other shots where he was kind of near the basket and just, kind of pump faked or passed it out. It just didn't really make a lot of sense to me. I guess some of it you can attribute to Boston's defense, kind of just making him a little bit more uncomfortable. But again, still, you got a strength advantage over most of the guys that you're playing. I guess Tatum's very strong, but but so is Butler. I mean, there are
Right.
possessions where he's moving Robert Williams out of the way. So I mean, I just feel like he's got to be more aggressive. He's you just got to be better. I mean, like I know that's kind of a cliche saying, but like
You're not
Butler
wrong
and
though.
Bam have to be better. I
You're
mean,
not wrong.
And again, to Boston's credit, they have switched up what they've done defensively, and they've done a better job guarding those guys. But I don't know. Those guys I feel like are just a little bit too good, especially Butler to just have a 5 for 21 outing. I mean, with the way he's been these playoffs, I mean, it's kind of these last three losses have kind of coincided with like three of some of his worst performances this
Sure.
postseason. So I mean, if they're gonna win, they're gonna need a big Jimmy Butler game, and maybe he's got it, but I mean, maybe he doesn't. I mean, we'll
We'll
just have to
see. I
see.
mean, the secret stuff might have, ran out, but it is what it is. But I'm really excited for Monday, and I'm really excited for the live stream too. Don't forget about that, guys. So please come through and join. It helps us out a huge amount. You guys don't even know. And we just want to chill with you guys. So you know, please come through.
Um, So I guess now that we've pretty much done like most of the recap of that game, and this is pretty much the only game that we have, right? Because
Yeah,
again, the Western Conference Finals wrapped up a long time ago. Denver's pretty much just waiting for
waiting.
whoever
Yep.
comes out. I guess we'll get into the news. So
Yes, sir.
first order of business, we got the Milwaukee Bucks have hired their new coach, according to Woj and Shams Charania, Adrian Griffin. Um, so in fairness, I don't necessarily know much about him as a coach. I do know he was a former player, and I know
Hmm.
that his name has come up many times as a potential coaching can right as a potential head coach candidate. He's been an assistant for a while. Um, but again, like this is his opportunity, right? Reportedly, Giannis, this is the guy that he was kind of pining for the Bucks to get. Um, one of three finalists. It was him, Kenny Atkinson, and Nick Nurse. Now,
Hmm.
reportedly, Nick Nurse pulled out, which is kind of interesting. I feel like that's kind of like something that I do wonder what the reasoning behind that was. Maybe
Right.
he feels like he might have a better offer coming because I do feel like he'll coach somewhere else. But I also feel like hey, you get a chance to coach Giannis. I mean, maybe you should take it. But also, again, if Griffin is the guy, if Adrian Griffin is the guy that Giannis wanted, I mean, if you're Milwaukee, you kind of have to take that into consideration. Obviously, he'll be replacing Mike Budenholzer, right, who
Hmm.
was the coach there for 5 years, also coached them to a title back in
Yes.
2021, just 2 seasons ago, right? But it felt like this was probably going to happen once Milwaukee lost to of course Miami in five. And the way that they lost, right, yeah, especially the fourth quarters of the last couple of games, I thought was pretty bad. I know that apparently Budenholzer had a family thing going on, right, where I think his brother died in a car crash. But
Yes.
at the
Tragedy.
same time, right, and it is a business, right, and it seems like with a lot of these coaches, it's kind of like, what have you done for me lately, right, and of course, back to back early playoff exits from Milwaukee, right, not necessarily great. Obviously, last year, no Middleton against Boston. And then this year, right, Giannis gets hurt and Middleton battled injuries the whole season, but still, right, like we've seen other coaches get fired, for similar-ish types of reasons, right? We saw Monty Williams let go. We saw Doc Rivers let go. Um, but again, like, I feel like this should be a decent hire. Again, of course, um, it's always kind of like a double-edged sword when you get a rookie head coach because you
Yes.
just never know, right? We've seen some guys, right, as young, right, make it, right? Like obviously we have Darvin Ham as a rookie head coach, right? He did a good job turning the Lakers season around. We have Mazzulla, right, who has gotten the Celtics. I mean, not much, further from where they were last year.
Yeah. No
Um,
drop off really, in terms of
exactly.
where they are.
Yeah, of course. But then you also have other guys, right? Like say Luke Walton, right? Who didn't do a great job when he was given the opportunity as a head coach, and
I
then he was
forgot about
gone.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Amongst others. So I don't know. Like I said, in fairness, I don't know much about him because he is an assistant, so I don't necessarily know what he was responsible for in Toronto. Um, but again, apparently Giannis wanted him. So I feel like this should be a solid hire. We'll just have to kind of just wait and see. Obviously, in fairness, he has a son, AJ Griffin, right, who's on the Hawks.
Yep.
So this is clearly a basketball family, right? I think the mom as well also, I think, was
Okay.
in sports.
I
So
didn't
I
know
mean,
that.
just in general,
Cool.
yeah, exactly. So should be an interesting hire, obviously, and again, it's always kind of interesting to see what happens with rookie head coaches because again, we've seen some rookie head coaches do a great job, and then we've also seen some that have been absolutely horrid. So
Yeah, you don't have to tell me. Um, and for me, I think this is, I can't really speak on if it's a good hire, but because like you said, I'm not really familiar with the guy. Um, outside of really the fact that his son is in the NBA. But I think this is probably going to end up being a good hire just due to the fact that this is the guy that your star player wanted. If you're trying to please your star player, um, and especially a guy like Giannis, I feel like Giannis's basketball IQ is kind of underrated. So I definitely believe that this will probably work out, in favor of the Bucks. I don't think it's going to be a issue where it's like, we're going to be seeing the coach getting blamed for, them potentially falling short or whatever. But, this is the guy that Giannis wants. So if Giannis wants him, I believe in it. So,
Yeah. So moving on to the next one from Brian Windhorst.
hmm
Basically, Toronto hasn't really decided what they're going to necessarily do this offseason in terms of their direction.
okay.
So obviously we know they have key guys, right? Fred Van Vliet, I think, has a player option.
hmm
Of course, we've heard tons of trade rumors about everybody on that roster.
Yep.
Um, so I guess kind of where are you at with the Toronto situation, right? I feel like, going into the deadline, we felt like they shouldn't blow it up, but we did think some guys should be on the move, right? Like
hmm
say an Ananobi, or guys like that, right? But also like they had a really bad season.
hmm
They were a playing team and got eliminated in the first playing game,
Yep.
right? In a game where I think they had a huge lead, I think in
hmm
the first half, right? That was the free throw game where they missed all the free throws.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess where are you kind of at with the Toronto thing? Or do you think it's probably time for them to kind of just like, go into the direction of sort of like a rebuild, or do
Okay.
you think like, we might as well keep the guys we have and just kind of see where we can go from there? Just and we bring our new lottery pick in and see what happens.
I'm more on the latter. I'm more on, eh, not, full blown rebuild, but continue to build with what you have. Maybe Van Vliet has to go, but I think you need to keep Siakam. I think Scotty Barnes is very young. He has tremendous upside. He did have a down season compared to his rookie season, but nonetheless, I think he'll bounce back. He's still super young, so there's tremendous talent and potential there. And then OG, I feel like, he's also potentially on the block as well. I feel like because you can get some insane return value for him down the road, but, in terms of the here and now, I would prefer to keep him, but if push comes to shove, then yeah, I wouldn't have a problem moving him and Van Vliet as well because I think Van Vliet probably needs to go, but it is what it is. But no, I wouldn't say blow the whole thing up and move the entire roster. But some key guys may need to get shuffled around a bit, or their roles may need to be adjusted. But we'll see where that is because I feel like Toronto is a very interesting team, and they're definitely one to watch considering the storyline of their recent years.
Yeah, because I definitely don't necessarily think they're close to being a really good team,
Mm-mm.
because they just weren't good enough this year.
Yeah.
But kind of like you said, they probably don't have to move everybody.
Mm-mm.
But I definitely think, like, like you said, Siakam probably keep, unless you get like a Godfather type offer,
Sure.
right? But maybe like an Ananobi or a Van Vliet, maybe you move on from one of those guys, because but like you said, we'll just have to see. It's just, it will just, the off season is where these things start to take more and more shape. So for now, all we really just have is like just kind of just small stuff.
Yep.
Um, Moving on, according to Woj, Blazers open a trading pick. Portland willing to trade number 3 overall pick in this year's draft for pretty elite player. Yeah, quote
I
unquote
like that.
pretty elite player. I don't know what tier that would be. Because I mean, of course, everybody would love to have a pretty elite player,
Sure.
for a draft pick. But again, it's just I don't know. Because again, it's just we've talked about this before, right? Where I feel like Portland, regardless of what they do, isn't going to be good enough to contend. Um, and I just feel like for them, like ideally, you'd like to move on from Lillard,
hmm
and move him to another team and kind of just rebuild and start over. Like if I'm Portland, I don't like the idea of trading away the number 3 pick, and getting
Okay.
back a guy that may help you right now, but you're still not going to be good enough to really do a whole lot, right? It's not like they're, a team like say like a Boston or a Denver or even like say like a I don't know like a Lakers or Clippers it's not like they're one of those teams where like they're pretty close to being a championship team.
They've got a long way to
Like
go.
yeah, like Portland I just feel like has a long way to go and I don't really think they're going to be a championship team. So it's just like I think again, maybe the guy you trade for is way better than whoever you draft at number 3. That's probably the most likely scenario.
Right.
But again, it's like, how much better are you gonna be than what you were this year? I guess you could be better, but I don't see any realistic scenario where they're a championship contender, which to me would be the only real reason why you would want, why Lillard and Portland would continue to keep this relationship. I guess in fairness, at the same time, like he probably just likes playing there, likes staying there. He's the main guy. Um, with the fans. Because again, we've heard this before, right? Where like every year,
It's a
people will
saga.
be, you might hear something like, "Is Lillard out of there?" And then he's not out of there, right? It's
Right.
kind of like Beal. And at this point, they're making a ton of money. I don't know if their trade value is what it was before, right? Just because they're making a ton of money and you have to give up way more to get them now than you did before.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if they traded the pick to get somebody, to help him out, but I don't know. I don't really feel like that's a good idea because I don't think you're gonna really be that much better. But, you
Yeah.
know,
Well,
you never know.
for
Maybe
me,
maybe they can pull it off and make something really good happen.
for me, I think I'm gonna have to disagree because I feel like it's such a gamble because they're stuck. If they had the number two pick, this would be completely different. You'd be like untradeable, not movable. But with the
Yeah.
number three, after Scoot, we know Wemby's going number one. We know Scoot's going number two. After Scoot, it's pretty much a gamble. Um, the Thompson twins, they're a huge gamble because they can't. They've already proved to us they can't shoot at the OTE league. They couldn't shoot. And I'm not saying it's never going to develop or anything like that. But coming into the league, they're not going to be able to shoot at an amazing clip. They're freak athletes. That's simple as that. Generational freak athletes. But you know are you going to be able to build a franchise around those guys? So that's what I'm saying. I feel like the number three pick is a sticky situation because it's a gamble either way. It's a gamble to trade it, it's a gamble to keep it. So I'm kind of 50-50 on it. I'm not going to wholeheartedly disagree, with moving it, but I can't also agree with keeping it. It's just going to have
Right.
to be a gamble where we have to see what happens, quite literally, because I don't know who you would take at three. Especially like I don't know. Brandon Miller's a great player, but he's gonna be like one of those guys like Keegan Murray, where he's like one of those NBA ready guys, and it's like his his floor is really high, but his ceiling is kind of low. Like he's already kind of developed. He's kind of peaked. I think personally. Um, but versus the Thompson twins and other guys in the draft, um, their ceilings are huge. So I don't know.
Mm.
It all comes down to what Portland wants to do. But I'm sure honestly they'll probably find a way to mess it up.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Like you said, it is definitely a tough decision because, like you said, you don't have the one or two pick where it's like a no brainer.
Mm-mm.
You do have three, so that is more of a gamble. But
Yep.
like I said, I just don't see a player that they get back that they can realistically get back that's all of a sudden going to make them
Sure.
a contender. So it's just like to me, if I'm Portland, I'd rather just rebuild because again, like you're going to be mediocre with the team you have, and you're probably not going to be that much better, right? Like because again, they'd have to climb over a lot of teams, if they're trying to contend. Because I mean, like again, you already have all the teams that made the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
Most of those teams, right? You got Denver, Memphis, I guess who else? Sacramento, Phoenix,
Mm-hmm.
right? Clippers,
Mm-hmm.
Warriors, Lakers, and then Minnesota, right? All those teams I feel like right now are better than Portland. And I
Sure.
mean, some of the teams outside of the playoffs could be better, right? Like maybe Dallas, maybe they get a little bit better, right? And again, Luca, you have him. Maybe I mean they should be a team that's competing for the playoffs or playing next season, right? Oklahoma City could be better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, New Orleans, if they actually have a healthy season of Zion and Ingram, right, they would probably be better.
Yep.
So I don't know. I don't see what Portland can really do to be much better than those teams because again, there's already 8 other teams that are better than you for sure. And there might be more on the way that will be better than you next season, and they
Right.
don't even have to do as much.
Yeah.
Like
It's
Oklahoma
rough
City could run, yeah, Oklahoma City could run the same roster back,
and
and
still
then
be better with
yeah,
Chet.
bring in Chet Holmgren, and then bring in whoever else they have in the lottery, and they'll just be better outright. Um,
It's
but
ridiculous.
like you said, it is a tough scenario to be in. No man's land, like we've said many times.
Yep.
Next up, Chris Haynes reportedly the NBA is reportedly going to next season Change the challenge rule. So that way, if you win the challenge, you will be able to get it back. In my opinion, this should have already been done.
Yeah,
Um,
that should have been how it was from the
yeah,
jump.
I feel like when the challenge was first implemented, that should have been a thing. Because I mean, we've seen a number of games, right, where you win a challenge, um, right, but then you're in a position where something dumb happens later. Let me challenge again, but you just can't,
You
right?
can't.
And
It's dumb.
exactly, and like in fairness, right, usually one play doesn't cost you a game, right? But it would be nice to have that option just so that way, like, again, if you win the challenge, you should be rewarded, right?
Yeah,
So it'd be one thing if you lost it, but I don't know. Some of the, but then it's like, some people may not want more reviews, but I feel like this is a good idea,
but yeah, like a prime example. It happened in the Miami Boston game.
right?
Where Spoelstra challenged the call, and it's like, yeah, you kind of prevented them from getting, I think it was free throws on it or
Talking
something,
about the
right?
first one.
Yeah,
Are you talking about the Jalen Brown one where it was
yeah,
like he got where like he did the arm
the
hook
arm
thing?
hook, yeah, the hook,
Yeah, exactly, and the basket went in, and it
yeah,
was and one, and then Spoelstra challenged it, and he won the challenge,
but he didn't
but
get anything
they were
back.
still like, "Oh, it wasn't really a foul," so it still gets the 2. Yeah, I also don't like how some of the challenges are ruled because 'cause I'm like, because like, clearly he's challenging whether or not it's an offensive foul, right? Like, so either call it an offensive foul or call it a block.
Right. But
Like,
even
I don't
then, like
feel
the
the
reward, he should have gotten, a challenge back.
Yeah,
As
exactly.
simple as that. But, things like that could change potentially the course of a game.
Exactly, yeah, because you just know because again, like, usually coaches save their challenges, towards the end of the game because they know, like, we might need it, like,
You
with
ain't
the
getting that
game on
thing
the
back.
line, right? Exactly, and, like, you know, sometimes right, and usually that's why we don't normally see coaches use challenges in the first half because you only get one, and the only reason why you would ever use it in the first half is if either, one of your main guys is in foul trouble, or, something else like that, right?
Right.
Like or somebody on the other team, right, is in danger of picking up like another, critical foul or something, right? You just don't normally see it, which makes sense when you have one challenge. But if you have two, maybe, right? I still feel like they would still probably save it,
Yeah.
but if you can win the challenge, right, then you can use it knowing that you'll get another one back. So I feel like this is a good idea, but
Me too.
again, like it's kind of like the flopping thing where I'm like, this should have already been
Yeah.
done.
Should have
Like,
been there from the
like
jump.
I'm not gonna say too little, too late, but again, I just feel like this should have already been done because again, like everybody knows that this was an issue, right? Everybody's talked about it. Everybody knows, like this isn't a secret.
Right.
Um, Coming in next, kind of one of the stranger NBA stories. Kind of, I guess, we didn't talk about the one. What was it? It was like the Jaren Jackson one earlier in the season, right? Where there was like this weird thing where people were saying like his blocks were falsely counted, right? But we didn't talk about that because
Yeah.
we thought it was kind of, you know,
Neither here nor there.
yeah, kind of a waste. And it ended up being like phony anyways. Like we just don't normally talk about those type of stories, but this one may have some legs to it. So, one of the referees in the NBA, Eric Lewis, apparently now he is under review by the NBA. So supposedly, on Twitter, he has a burner account, and he had been discussing, the officiating and some of the stuff going on in the games. So yeah, people found that out, and so now he's under investigation.
Yeah.
This is kind of wild, right? So I think this is the referee, if I'm not mistaken, right? That had that funny game. What was it with Boston and
Boston,
LA, right?
LA.
Yeah,
Braun didn't
exactly.
get the call.
Exactly. But I don't know. I wasn't really expecting this, so it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But
It's
also
weird.
it's at the same time like, yeah, it's weird, but I also don't know where it's gonna go because it's like, I mean, I think if they basically like 100% prove that it's him and he's talking about the officiating, right, then he could get in trouble. But like, is it just like a suspension for a little bit, or is it just or does he get you know I don't know. Fired? Probably not. But
Right.
this is definitely one of the stranger stories, right? A referee having a burner account. We know because it's funny because we've seen players in the past have burner accounts that have been caught. We've also seen, I think, what was it? The previous Philly executive, he got fired.
Yes.
'Cause he got caught with a burner account, talking, bad mouthing some of the players on his team. but never have we heard a story about a referee having a burner account.
Normally,
And
they stay out of the media, you know?
exactly, and usually I feel like they normally should because it's just like because obviously there's always been conversations about like making sure the integrity of the game is in check, right?
Yeah.
That's usually why people don't want like players and referees betting on games that
Right.
they're involved in just because in general it's kind of sketchy. But yeah, this is definitely kind of a funny, weird, bizarre situation that I can't really point back to a similar situation that I've heard about before.
Yeah. I've never heard anything like it. The account, I believe, um, I think it followed George. I think it's George Mason's women's
Yeah,
basketball team or something like
yeah, I
that.
think his wife.
And his
Yeah, I
wife is the
think like he
coach there.
followed. Yeah, exactly. It was his burner. I think people figured it out because he followed with his burner account a lot of similar pages that he followed like with his family.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly,
Yeah.
which is one of the first mistakes. If
Yeah.
you allegedly have a burner account, you probably don't want to use it to follow the same pages as you normally would with your regular account.
Yeah.
But again, allegedly, right? Because
Yeah.
investigation's not under what is not done just yet,
Right.
right? I
Right.
think
Right.
they've reportedly opened it, right? But they haven't
Yeah.
reported anything yet. I don't think it's done, so we're not gonna completely, say, what's happening because we don't know just yet. But
If it's
it is
real,
definitely a
holy cow. That would
yeah,
be a really big stain on the NBA.
yeah. And I think he's been a long time ref. I think they said that he had been refereeing for about 19 seasons.
Yeah.
And he even refed in I think the last well, not last year's finals, but I think he refed 2019, 2020, and 2021. Um, so it's definitely kind of a weird scenario going on, right? I
Yeah.
mean, even like I think like somebody that claimed to be like his older brother, right,
I saw
responded like
that.
to the
Yeah.
thread exactly. Like it was very bizarre. I mean,
It's weird. But the NBA,
exactly,
they'll
and I think
figure it out. And I saw on Twitter a funny. It's not real. This is satire, but it was just funny. It actually made me laugh. It was like, yeah, LeBron is 0-82 against this guy.
I actually don't know the record
Yeah,
against
I
him.
don't know, but they're like, yeah, he's 0-82. I was like, that can't be real, right? And it's not. So it's a false stat. But it was just funny. It
Yeah,
actually made me laugh out loud.
yeah. Moving on, Nick Nurse, according to the Philly Inquirer, open to I guess reuniting with Daryl Morey. I didn't
Okay.
even know, before reading this that he had even had a real relationship with Daryl Morey.
Right.
But so in a way, again, it makes sense in the sense that he did reportedly pull out of the Milwaukee job. Right. So I feel like that has to mean that, one of these other coaching jobs is probably coming his
Yeah,
way.
I'm in love with the juice
I
and
guess
Mary
between
Jane.
like
I just put a
Philly,
tail like smoking a different strain.
what is it? Philly, Phoenix, and who else is left
Um.
that also fired the head coach? Somebody else did, right? I
Uh.
guess the other ones have already opened up, right?
Houston.
Because
Yeah.
Houston
Yeah. Houston
hired
has Adoka.
Doka,
Yeah.
and I guess Milwaukee's is closed. So I guess it pretty much is at this point. I guess it pretty much is Philly, Phoenix, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
guess but I don't know, because like if you're Nick Nurse, which one would you prefer to coach? Like, I mean, because
Probably
I mean, you
Phoenix,
almost
man.
yeah, because you would think Phoenix just because like you have more in a way high level talent with Durant and Booker
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to I guess what you have in Philly with like Embiid and maybe Harden, but maybe not Harden and then Maxi. But at the same time, like I don't know because like Phoenix could be in a situation where like they could all of a sudden kind of just kind of collapse real pretty quickly, and then
Yeah.
if they kind of just blow it up, then you're not really left with much. But then like with Philly, you may not be left with much either. So I don't know. I mean, obviously you go with which one gives you the most opportunity. Maybe one gives him more influence over the other, right? I would imagine maybe he
Yeah.
might have more influence in Philadelphia if he has a prior relationship with Daryl Morey. And relationships, usually are kind of what drives, a lot of these business decisions anyways. But I don't know. I feel like the Phoenix job should be more attractive, but if he does have a prior relationship with Morey, I guess it would probably maybe he's going to Philly.
Yeah.
But it's going to take a little bit of time probably because Philly also has to figure out the hard and stuff. So we may not see them hire a coach, until a little bit.
Yep. I agree.
Um, can you just pause the recording for a second?
I can't really pause it, but I can stop it.
Oh, well, I thought, oh, shoot, I skipped one.
What?
That's why I was confused. I was like, wait a second, there's more. Okay, there we go. So I guess we can continue the recording.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next up, Wizards.
Oh
Reportedly, your
goodness.
Wizards, Mark Stein, reported the Wizards may make major changes. Rival teams expect Washington to be quote unquote aggressive in free agency after hiring Michael Winger as president. Um,
Hmm.
I do kind of wonder how that's going to work because I mean, I guess Porzingis, right? I don't. I guess he has a player option, right? But I'm assuming if the Wizards are going to re-sign him, he would opt out and get a long-term deal. Um, with Kuzma, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with Kuzma. I guess he's kind of in a similar situation where he's going to be a free agent, probably,
Yes.
right? Because he's going to opt out and re-sign.
And
I
Cruz
do
wants
kind
to
of
get
wonder
paid.
because again, yeah, and it's weird because if you re-sign both of those guys, you don't have cap space.
Nope.
Um, which is kind of bizarre.
Yep.
Um, then if you let them walk, you're gonna have to wait, I think, a little bit, to have more. So I don't know. It's kind of a weird position. I would imagine that I would think they would re-sign both. It's gonna be interesting to see, like, how they feel about paying both of those guys big money. But you also in a position where I don't feel like you can really let them walk. But again, it's tough because it's like then you're gonna be paying a ton of money for a team where it feels like they just, may not be able to go many places.
Yeah.
Because again, kind of like what we talked about with Portland, right? Similar to Washington in the East, right? Boston, they're not going anywhere. Even if they don't make the finals, they're still gonna be really good next year. Um, Milwaukee should still be good, right? Even with Philly, they should still be a decent team regardless of what happens.
Hmm.
Right? Same with the Knicks. I mean, in the East, you have a little bit more flexibility because the bottom of the East is not quite the same as the bottom of the West, right? But
Right.
Atlanta Hawks, maybe they're still decent. Cleveland, obviously, they should still be good. Um, and then Miami, right? You would think Miami would still be hanging around, win or lose this series. So I mean, I don't know. Washington's in a very tough spot, but again, like I just don't really know what the alternative is because I don't feel like letting them walk is a smart idea because you're letting talent go for nothing. But then
Yeah.
again, if you pay those guys, you're pretty much locked into that roster unless you can find a way to move on from Bradley Beal.
Yeah. For the Wizards, I've said this multiple times. We're stuck in limbo right now. I honestly don't think there's a sense of direction, and there probably won't be for another year or two. That's how long I think it takes. It's not going to be immediate shift, and I think there's really a need for a culture shift too, because it seems like guys are just on our team to get paid, not to win. That's the kind of vibe that I'm getting from Washington right now, and that's not good because you're letting down the fan base. You're letting down lots of people who are committed to you guys for years. Um, but I'm not going to speculate or anything like that. I don't know what's going on in their heads, but I'm just going off of what I see, moves wise and what we're trying to do. And it's like there really is no sense of direction. It's like how can you say we're going to be aggressive in free agency, but we got to worry about our own guys first. We got to take care of our own guys. So um, yeah, I don't know. Money management. I'm telling you, the Ernie Grunfeld and the Tommy Shepard situation. They put us in a big hole, and people don't realize it. And they probably won't realize it until a couple of years from now. Because now we have potentially new management coming in here, but
Yeah,
it is what it is. So my
yeah.
hopes are not high, but it's nice to hear, but I'm not sold on it.
Now, reportedly, it does say David Aldridge of the Athletic. I believe he's pretty connected to the
Very,
Wizards. I think
yeah,
he's a very good source for the Wizards. He said, also said one of the other reasons is the owner, or excuse me, team governor. Apparently, he's not a big fan of tanking, but he's giving the new guy the green light to do whatever he wants with the roster. So, again, like you're getting new management. I guess he's the team president. He's got some big shoes to fill, or a big mess to clean up, I
there you go.
suppose.
That's
Um,
yeah, because the shoes were
yeah,
pretty small.
exactly.
Just to
Yeah,
let you know.
yeah, but again, like you'll have to see because again, like usually, when you get a new guy, right, it's gonna go one of two ways, right? He's either gonna actually do at least a semi decent job because again, it's gonna be really hard to fix everything
Yeah.
in one off season. Like you said, I feel like it's probably gonna take at least a year or two, to kind of figure that out. But again, right, like he worked with the Clippers, again you would think, given the fact that the Clippers have done a decent job with their rosters the last several years, you would think, that he'd be able to kind of bring that over to Washington.
Yeah.
But again, like it's a tough task because you got a lot of guys, making a lot of money that probably shouldn't be making that much money. But again, it's a tough job. But when you get that job, you got to figure out a way to do it.
Pretty
So,
much. Yep.
that's yeah. So that's gonna be his job, I guess. For the foreseeable future. And again, I think, in addition to the Wizards, he's also handling the Go Go and the Mystics, right?
He's handling the
So
entire monumental sports conglomerate.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he's handling the WNBA team.
Yes.
I guess their season has already started up.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's handling the G League team, which I
Mm-hmm.
guess is probably next year, next season, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then the Wizards, of course, they'll be moving on out in the summer. So
Yep.
I guess we'll just have to see where this goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I guess finally to wrap it up, according to Mark Stein once again, um, Dallas intent on re-signing Irving and have no interest in sign and trade with Lakers for Russell.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a weird thing that was reported. I kind of assumed that was kind of just like
I thought that was unspoken.
sort of obvious.
Yeah.
Because again, like with Dallas, you don't do what you did to get Kyrie and not re-sign him. And even if they in their heart of hearts didn't want him back, they're kind of in a position where they have to bring him back. Because again, you already messed up by letting Jalen Brunson walk, and you don't want to make it worse. Because if Kyrie walks, right, then you have no means to make up for that cap space, right? Like you don't get 30 or whatever million back.
Right.
So you pretty much have no real choice but to bring him back. And I don't. And again, like doing a sign and trade and bringing in D'Lo, I mean that's not going to really make Dallas much better because I feel like that's a downgrade from Kyrie Irving, even though he is
Sure.
younger. But I don't know. I mean, again, this is something that I guess has been reported. It's been heard. Um, and again, we know the Lakers obviously want Kyrie, but also like with Dallas, it just again they traded for him. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to let him go. So I feel like Dallas is probably kind of just stuck with him. Where like I don't I think they're pretty much gonna have no choice but to bring him back. Because again, if you let him walk, you're gonna be in an even worse situation because you're not gonna be able to make up for that talent um elsewhere in free agency. Because this is, we haven't talked about it a lot, and I guess we will, once the season's over. But this is a very weak free agency class.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of super talented guys, and a lot of the top talented guys are probably going to go back to their own teams. So, if you're Dallas, I mean, again, you're in a tough spot because you made a number of mistakes that got you to this point. You have Luca, who's one of the best players, potentially a generational guy,
I think he
that
really
should,
already is.
yeah, should be contending every year. Um, right. But, they're kind of a ways away from that right now. They have the 10th pick. So obviously you got that to your advantage. So maybe you trade that, right? But again, like we said before, this is going to be an interesting offseason for Dallas because there's a lot of moving parts that they got to figure out. Because again, you can't keep compounding your mistakes. And if you do that, I mean, then you might be another offseason away from Luca asking out. So
Yeah.
they got to, again, they got to handle this really carefully. And I feel like, again, I feel like that would almost be like a semi bad idea for both teams, but especially for Dallas, because it's just like, again, like if you do that, I mean, you're not going to get any better by swapping those guys. Even for the Lakers, right? You put yourself in a position where you might have to give up guys to get Kyrie, and I don't think you would want to do that either if you're LA,
Nope.
and that would be especially damaging considering they just went to the Western Conference Finals and have a chance to get better if they run it back and bring in some other guys. I don't think this makes a lot of sense for either team.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we've heard it many times. I would be really surprised if that were to happen.
Yeah. I feel like, if LA was to get Kyrie, it would have been, closer towards the deadline more so. Not, not now. There's no way because I mean this team got to the Western Conference Finals. They had potential. We didn't even get a full season with this squad anyways, so that as well. So I think they're gonna run it back and just probably work on getting a big man. And then for the Mavs, you can't give up Kyrie because of what you gave up. And you definitely have to bring him back. You have to. You have to. And he's probably going to get paid. So I don't think there's any worries from Kyrie, Dallas, or LA. I don't think LA feels like they're missing out either. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what they do because
yeah,
again, like they don't. Dallas doesn't have a lot of options, and again, if you lose them, you can't replace them.
yeah,
So you kind of have to figure that out. But at the same time, I also understand not feeling great about having to pay him max money. I think the most he can get is like 47 million. I don't
hmm
a year. I don't think he's gonna get that. I'd be
no,
shocked if he got that from anybody, let alone Dallas. But again, like again, you kind of made your bed, Dallas, so you kind of have to sleep in it. I mean,
Yep.
like it just again,
Kyrie
it
made his
starts.
too.
Not even- Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and again, it's not even mainly the Kyrie thing. The main first mistake was letting Brunson go because
Brunson.
again, they could have had him for way less than what New York gave him, and
Hmm.
that was just a huge mistake. Because
Dumb.
imagine if they had kept him, and then maybe you just moved Dinwiddie and maybe some of the other guys for somebody else, or even if you move him for Kyrie, then you have Luca, Kyrie, and Brunson,
Holy cow.
or
Imagine that.
or yeah, or again, even if you don't do that, maybe you just move those guys just for an upgrade at the wing spot or or something else like that. Like
Right.
you would have had way more flexibility. Um, and again, like it's just bad decision, and again, like even Christian Wood, he might walk
Yep.
from Dallas. I mean, again, he was okay for Dallas, right? So it's not as big of a deal if he walks, but again, like, you can't trade for guys or acquire decent talents and then let them walk because then there's no means to replace them at this
Nope.
point, right? Like with Dallas, you know, what would have been great is if they had figured out how to put a good team with Luca before he was on his max, right? Because he wasn't making much money, and it's not his fault, right? But like, he wasn't making as much money. You would have had a chance to, have a really good team, but they weren't able to do that in time. So now they're kind of just scrambling and kind of just, you know, making panic moves and kind of just trying to figure out how to not screw up around the margins, right? Because
Yep.
again, you got a superstar, right? Like it shouldn't be super complicated, but they made it harder, right?
Right.
Because again, you found somebody in Jalen Brunson who worked with Luca, who played really well alongside of him, who fit. He was young, right? The timeline fits, and you let him go for nothing. You could have had him for cheap, right? And I mean, again, maybe
They
you don't get
sold.
that. Yeah, maybe you don't get this version of Jalen Brunson that we saw this year, but anything remotely close, I mean, makes Dallas a better team than they were last year.
Sure.
Um, so I mean, just I don't know, just kind of a rough season
Mismanagement.
for Dallas. Yeah, yeah, rough season for Dallas, and they got to figure out something because again, this can't continue.
Nope.
When you have a superstar on your team.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's it for today's episode of Off Ball Takes. A little bit shorter, I guess, than the previous ones, but
Hmm.
again, not as much to recap. A little bit more other things to talk about to kind of make up for it, but just in general, right? And it's going to kind of be like that at this point, right? Where we're closing in on the end of the season, right? Of course, by the time this episode's posted, right, the finals will be hours away. And we'll have the live stream after the finals, right? We'll go live and discuss the game, of course, and the potential finals matchup. Regardless, it's going to be fun. So come on and hang out, talk to us. We always tend to respond to everybody in the chat,
Yes.
as we can.
We're
So
very
obviously
interactive.
sometimes, yeah, exactly. So that sometimes that can make things kind of weird, but at the same time, it's fun. Um, but yeah, regardless, we have that content coming out, of course. Again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for listening. Hopefully your Memorial Day is going great.
Yeah.
Being safe, doing whatever you're doing to have fun. So thanks for listening, and I guess we'll see you Monday night.
Yep.